Again, good morning, everyone. So, in the previous classes, we were talking about welded connections, and today I want to discuss some examples, right? So, last time we had discussed one example that I will quickly uh, go over again. So, this example was about a butt joint. So, butt joint obviously means if it is a welded butt joint, it obviously means that groove weld is used. Okay. So, the groove weld is of this shape, bevel shape, right? So one in this groove, one surface has not been beveled, but the other surface has been beveled. If both surfaces were beveled, then it would be a V groove. But this one is a bevel groove. Okay, but that does not really pay. That is a detailing requirement. But from design point of view, from load calculation and strength calculation point of view, it doesn't matter whether it's a bevel, it's a double bevel, it's a single bevel, or it's a V, or what kind of groove it is. That is more like a detailing requirement, which is a requirement during fabrication. Okay, so it's a full penetration weld that is a given, and there are two plates of thicknesses 14 mm and 16 mm respectively. So T1 is 14 and T2 is 16 mm. Okay, the load is also given 430 kilonewton tension. Length of the weld, that is 175. So basically, in the third dimension, in the out of plane direction, the thickness of the plates and the length of the weld both are same, is 175 millimeter. uh, Shop welding has been done. So shop welding, if it is mentioned that it is shop welding, then we know that the factor of safety to be used is 1.25. Okay. Electrode it was not mentioned last time. I have just added this information. So electrode is EX040XX. So for this electrode, you can go to that table that I had provided in the lecture notes. Basically, that electrode comes under FU values of 410 to 530 or something like that. So it is 410 or higher, and the base metal is of Fe410. Okay, so you have to use minimum of the two. So of course, the base metal will control, and you need to check for the safety whether this weld will be able to resist the load that is applied, and this is factored load, so you don't have to apply any load factors on top of it. Yeah, so it already accounts for all the 1.5 times dead load and plus 1.5 times live load. So all that combined load is already given to you. Okay, so the weld size will be equal to the smaller of the two thicknesses, right? This is a groove weld, and we had discussed this in the past. So the groove weld, the weld size is this size from here to here, and that is equal to less of the two, T1 and T2. And T1 and T2, T1 is 14 mm, T2 is 16 mm, so weld size is 14 mm. Weld strength that was given as for a groove weld, if you remember, the groove weld strength was given by Fy multiplied by the cross section area divided by factor of safety. So Fy, we have to use which Fy? We have to use Fy minimum. So that is Fy of the base metal or Fy of the electrode. So the electrode Fy, if I may go back to that particular slide, which gives the details of the different types of electrodes. So electrode Fy for EX40XX, the electrode Fy was 330 MPa. So between 330 MPa and 250 MPa, 250 is smaller. So 250 multiplied by the cross-section area. So cross-section area is basically width of the plate or the weld, length of the weld, or you can also say it is the width of the plates. That multiplied by the size, effective size of the groove, that is 14 mm divided by 1.25, which turns out to be 490 kilonewton. That is larger than, greater than 430 kilonewton. That was the demand. So therefore, this connection is safe. Okay. Another example we will do again on a groove weld. Yeah. So as long as we are dealing with groove welds, we will only have to deal with Fy values. We don't have to worry about Fu values. Okay. So in the previous case, you had two plates connected with a groove weld, but the stress everywhere was uniform because it was subjected to pure tension. In this particular case, it is not pure tension, it is bending moment. Okay, so what that means is that the bending moment value is given, factored moment is equal to 19.5 kilonewton meter. Okay. So these are the two plates, these are the two plates, these are the top view, these are the side view, front view. And these two plates are welded together using a groove weld. This is the V-shaped weld, V groove. Okay, and there is a moment applied, and the moment is in plane of the plates. Okay, so as a result, if this is the width of the plate, this end of this width will be in tension, and this end will be in compression of the weld. Okay, so this part of the weld is in compression, this is in tension. The question is, thickness of the plate is 18 mm, so thickness of the weld is also 18 mm, even though you have to provide some reinforcement layer, additional thickness you have to provide when you provide the weld, but we don't take that into account in the design calculation. We take only the thickness of the plate into account. So 18 mm thickness joined by a full penetration weld. Factored moment is 19.5 kilonewton meter, that is the demand. And field weld, so this time it is not a shop weld, it is a field weld. And when the field weld is to be used, the factor of safety will be lower because it is difficult to maintain a good quality, high level of quality control. So field weld is to be used, and again the same electrode EX40XX is used. So if this electrode is used and the base metal is Fe410, so Fy, again we are dealing with groove weld, so Fy will determine. So Fy for the base metal is 250 and Fy for the electrode is 330. So we will use Fy of the base metal, and we need to check for safety again. All right. So now what we need to check for is, we have to check for the stresses everywhere along the length of the weld and make sure that at no place the stress exceeds the maximum allowable value. Okay, the limit state value. So how do we go about? This is a plate. So you can imagine that this, if this is the plate and this is subjected to bending, imagine that this is the plate, this is the length of the weld, okay, and thickness is in this direction, and now it is subjected to bending like this. Okay? So if I ask you to calculate stresses somewhere here in the plate, you would know immediately how to calculate it because of this bending. Okay? Stress is equal to M multiplied by Y. Y is the distance from the centroid. So this is the distance from the centroid. That would be equal to half of the width. M multiplied by Y divided by the moment of inertia of the plate about this neutral axis. Right? That's what you do, and you will get the stress. The stress in the weld will be calculated exactly the same way. I mean, there is no fundamental difference, because groove weld, as I had mentioned, basically groove weld is filling up the same geometrical space, correct? So the stresses in groove weld can be calculated exactly the same way. So if I want to calculate stress here, so compressive stress here will be equal to, again, M multiplied by Y divided by moment of inertia. Since there is no tensile or compressive stress applied or force applied, it is purely moment. If there was a axial force applied in addition to the moment, then the stresses would have been equal to force divided by the total cross section area plus the moment Y divided by I. Okay, but that is not the case right now. There is no net force acting, so only moment Y divided by I has to be used. Fine. So what do I need? I need to know the I value. Now you know how to calculate I of this plate, moment of inertia of this plate about this neutral axis. Same thing you can use to calculate the moment of inertia of the weld, correct? Because essentially it is the same geometry. So the moment of inertia of this weld about this neutral axis, and you must watch it very carefully, that this bending that we are talking about is in the plane of the plate. It is not out of the plane of the plate. Okay, so the plate is not, the moment is not acting in a plane where the neutral axis is like this. The moment is acting in the plane where the neutral axis is here. Okay, it's not here. So this, so I'm for the second one, I'm not talking about the bending, I'm talking about the bending in the first one. So the neutral axis has to be calculated. For that, my moment of inertia for a rectangular section is 1 by 12 bh cube, right? So 1 by 12 is fine. Then you have bh cube. So b in this particular case will be equal to 18. It is not the h this time, it is 18 is the b, and h cube is the 180 cube. Okay, so from there I get the moment of inertia, and that same moment of inertia is can be used here, here, or at the weld location. So maximum stress because of the applied moment will be equal to my divided by I. Moment is equal to 19.5 kilonewton meter. So I'm converting that into millimeter. Okay, Newton millimeter. So I multiply with 10 to the power 6 to convert this value into Newton millimeter. Okay, multiplied by 90 is half of the distance, half of the width, which basically is the distance of the extreme fiber or extreme end from the neutral axis, divided by the moment of inertia, and I get maximum stress is equal to 200.6 kilonewton per millimeter square. Okay, Now, the weld strength, you must remember, is given as 250 is the yield stress, but I cannot utilize full 250. I have to divide it by the factor of safety. So 250 divided by factor of safety of 1.5, which is because it was a field weld. So the usable strength is only 166. That is the design strength. So the design strength is only 166 Newton per millimeter square. The demand was 200.6 Newton per millimeter square. And as a result, it turns out to be unsafe because demand is more than the strength. Okay. Any questions on this problem? No? All right. Moving forward. So this is the very typical type of a connection. So as I was mentioning in the previous class, that I will try to talk about some more practical examples later on. So this example is relatively more practical. That happens more frequently than the earlier two examples. So here, what you see is a gusset plate. So this plate is actually a gusset plate, and then an angle is welded to this gusset plate, and the angle is subjected to a tension. Okay, a tension force. The requirement is that you have to design the weld between the angle and the gusset plate so that it is sufficiently it is strong to resist the load requirement. The angle specifications are given. The angle is ISA 8058 with 80 mm leg connected to the plate. Okay, so if you look at here, this diagram here, this is the gusset plate. Okay, the gusset plate dimensions are not really required for this example because we are assuming that the gusset plate will not fail. Okay, only the thickness of the gusset plate may be useful. So this is the gusset plate, and this angle is welded to this gusset plate, and there are two fillet welds provided on each side. And so basically, if you look at the weld, the fillet welds are provided on three sides. Okay, here that is the end, and these are the two side fillets. You remember I was talking about end fillet and side fillets, and what we had found from the literature was that end fillets are stronger and less ductile, and side fillets are weaker but more ductile. However, the Indian code uh, recommends us to go for the same strength. So the strength we use for all kinds of fillet welds is FU sorry, FU, that is ultimate stress divided by square root of 3. So that is the strength for the fillet welds that we are required to use. Different codes recommend different values. So for example, American code, I know it requires you to use different strengths for different angles. So if it is a it gives an expression, and you need to calculate the direction of the force in that particular segment of the weld. So as per the American standard, what you may have to do is you have to divide this weld into smaller segments and see what is the direction of force in each weld, and then calculate the strength accordingly. Okay, but as per the Indian code, you can just assume that each weld, no matter what is the direction of the force, so for the entire segment, for each segment of this weld, you can assume that the strength is Fy by root 3, no matter the direction of the force. Okay, moving forward. So this angle is connected in such a way, this is an unequal sized angle. So the legs are not of equal size. One leg is 80 mm wide, the other leg is 50 mm wide. So but the connection is in such a way that the 80 mm leg is connected to the gusset plate and 50 mm leg is projecting outward. Okay, connected to 12 mm thick gusset plate. So the gusset plate is 12 mm thick. The FU value for the gusset plate as well as the angle, this angle, these are given as 410 MPa. So that is basically your Fe 410. So your Fy automatically is 250. Now, because it's a fillet weld, we don't need Fy value, we need Fu value. So we will use 410. And again, the same electrode can be assumed. So basically, the net Fu that we need to use for the same electrode, if you remember EX40XX, what does that mean? That particular electrode had a ultimate stress of 410 MPa to 530 MPa or something like that. So it is 410 or greater, and the base metal has the FU of 410, so we will use 410, minimum of the two. And it says that the weld size is 6 mm. So weld size is given. It's a field welding. It is done on the field. So factor of safety has to be 1.5. And you need to design the weld, basically length of the weld. So you need to design what should be the length of the weld to transfer the load equal to the design length, strength of the member. Okay. So we need to know what is the total length of the weld, and also what is the length, individual length on each individual sides. So LW1 and LW2 values have to be found out. Okay. For a net load acting toward the centroid, it is saying that the angle is under pure tension. As soon as it says that the angle is in pure tension, that automatically means that the load is acting at the centroid of the angle. Correct. Otherwise, if the load were not acting at the centroid, it would have introduced some moment. So now there are two things to worry about. One is the entire length of the weld should be enough to resist the total load. That is one thing. The second thing is that the centroid of this angle is not really here. It's not in the middle of this leg. So this is one leg, this is the other leg. The centroid is not in the middle of this leg, but it is slightly biased towards this side, towards the bottom. The reason for that is because there is more mass or more cross-section area sitting here. So the centroid will be biased towards this side. It will not be. So if this dimension is 80 mm, it will not be 40 mm. It will be slightly below this 40 mm length distance. All right. So this is the actual location of the neutral axis. Now that is the location where the load is acting, because it is mentioned that the angle is under pure shear, pure tension. So now the welds have to be distributed on the three sides in such a way so that their neutral axis or their centroid also coincides with the centroid of the angle. If that happens, then you can be assured that each component will be subjected to same level of stress. So that is the most efficient design as far as welding is concerned. If you do uneven weld, so let's say if for some reason, if I decide to do weld of certain length here and the same length is provided on this side, but what will happen is that the centroid of this weld will be sitting right here at the middle, that is 40 mm from the edge. But the centroid of the load is sitting away from it. So there will be a moment. For that moment, again, I have to calculate the stresses because of that moment. Okay. So, and that will of course introduce some inefficiencies, because that is not the most efficient design of the weld. So if I want to use the minimum length of the weld, it is better that the entire weld fails at the same time. It should not have uneven stresses. And for that, the centroid of the weld should coincide with the centroid of the applied load. Okay. So these two concepts are clear to everyone? First, the weld length should be sufficient to resist the entire load. Second, the weld should be in such a way, the weld dimension should be in such a way that the centroid of the weld coincides with the centroid of the load. And if that happens, then the length that you calculated earlier would be sufficient. Otherwise, what will happen is that if there is a moment introduced because of the external force, then that length that you calculated, assuming that the total force is applied and every component of the weld is carrying the same amount of load, will be wrong, will be unconservative. So you may have to increase the length of the weld also. So that's why that's an unconservative design. Moving forward, so we know that one second. Okay. Also, the load is not given. What is given to you is the design of the weld, and the weld should be designed in such a way so that it can transfer load equal to the design strength of the member. What it means is that you calculate the design strength of this angle, and whatever strength the angle has, the weld should be at least that strong or slightly stronger. Okay. So that is a very common strategy often used in very critical components or critical structures, where we design the welds to be, or our connections to be, stronger than the members, because failure of the welds typically be very catastrophic. So oftentimes we take this approach wherein the connections are stronger than the members. That is not always the case, but sometimes we take that approach. So that is what is being asked here. So the design strength of the angle is, we know that there are no holes in the angle, so we can simply take gross area Fy gamma m0, that is tensile strength. Okay. So for the angle, we can take Fy as 250 Gross cross-section area has already been calculated for you, 8058. It turns out to be 978 millimeter square, divided by factor of safety, which is 1.1 for yielding limit state. And what we get is 222.3 kilonewton. That is the strength of design strength of the angle. Now, the weld should be able to resist this much of load. Now, the thickness, the size of the weld is mentioned as 6 mm. Let's first check whether that is satisfying the weld dimension requirements. There were 3-4 requirements for the weld dimension. First one was that the single passed weld. Let me go back to that slide. If we do a single pass weld, then depending on the thickness of the thicker plate, the weld size should be at least this much. So here my angle was how thick? Do you remember? I've forgotten.
8
mm. Correct. So angle is 8 mm thick, and the gusset plate is 12 mm thick. So thickness of the thicker part we need to take. So the thicker part is 12 mm thick. So for 12 mm thickness, second row, for the second row, 12 mm thickness, the weld should be at least 5 mm. If it's a single pass weld, it should be 5 mm size. Correct? Or even the first pass should be at least 5 mm. So in the question, you have been asked to use a 6 mm weld. So that is okay, because it should be at least 5 mm. The purpose for this requirement was so that there is enough material. I am in the first pass itself, I am depositing enough molten material so that the base metal is able to fuse. The second requirement was the maximum size of the weld. Oh, first I'll go into the minimum size of the weld. So this requirement says that when you have this kind of a weld, you can see that this is very similar situation to what we have. We have an end fillet, and then we have 2 small side fillets. Correct? Now, in this particular requirement, it allows you to vary the size of the weld from side to end, but you don't have to do that because it's already given as equal on 3 sides, 6 mm every side. So that is fine. But for the end fillet, the requirement is that the effective thickness of the weld should be at least half the thickness of this plate. So this plate is your angle plate, angle leg, which is 8 mm thick. So this is 8 mm thick. Half of it is 4, so 4 mm, and your weld size is 6 mm square, and the effective thickness for that weld will be 6 divided by square root 2. So 6 divided by square root 2 is how much? 1.4, right? Approximately. So 4.2 mm. So effective thickness is 4.2 mm, and the total thickness of the angle is 8 mm. So half of that is 4 mm. So we are satisfying that requirement. Therefore, the weld size is appropriate. Fine. In addition to that, there are requirements for the square edge and there are requirements for the toe edge. Now, in this particular case, for an angle, you have both edges. And for each one of them, please remember the requirement. For a toe edge, the 1/4 of the thickness should be visible. And for the square edge, 1.5 mm should be visible. At least these two amounts will be visible. Now, if you look at this case, you have one side weld on this side, similarly one side weld on this side. So both this and these are both square edges, but this is the toe edge. Okay, so the 6 mm should be able to satisfy both these requirements. Let's check. So here the thickness is angle thickness is 8 mm. 8 minus 1.5, because this is an square edge. So 8 minus 1.5 is 6.5. So the weld is smaller than 6.5. That is a good thing. So at least, so in this case, 2 mm is visible, but only 1.5 mm had to be visible. So that is satisfied. On this edge, if you see, it's 8 mm, and 1/4 of 8 mm is again 2 mm, same. So 2 mm should be visible and 2 mm is visible. Okay, so both these requirements are satisfied. So 6 mm weld will be appropriate. We can go ahead with 6 mm weld. Okay. So now we move forward with the design. So for a fillet weld, we know the design strength of the fillet weld is equal to FU TE divided by root 3 gamma mw. So gamma is the safety factor. Fu is the ultimate stress, that is minimum of the ultimate stress of the base metal and the weld. So we use 410. And Te is basically your thickness of the size of the weld divided by square root 2, or in other words 0.7 approximately 0.76, 0.7 multiplied by 6 divided by root 3, 1.5. So this is obvious. Now you get a strength of, now in this expression I have not used the length, correct, because I want to calculate the length. So this strength that I'm calculating is for unit length of the weld, unit 1 millimeter length of the weld. So 1 millimeter length of this weld has a strength of 662 Newton, 663 Newton rather. Okay, so that is 1 millimeter weld. From there, I know the force requirement, demand, that is 222.27. So that divided by that and converted to Newtons, 10 to the power 3 divided by 662.8, that gives me 335 millimeter length. So the total weld has to be 335 millimeter long. Okay. So now, of course, I know that 80 millimeter is not going to be sufficient. I have to extend it on the sides because total length is 335. But in what proportion? Can I provide equal length on both sides, or do I need to distribute them unevenly? You have to distribute them unevenly because the applied force is also distributed, is not acting at the centroid. It is eccentric, right? So now 335, let's say I provide LW2 here and LW1 here. So first of all, you have to calculate where the centroid is acting. So typically for this kind of members, the centroid location would be usually given in the tables. So you can pick the centroid location that is given as 27.3 millimeter away from this edge. Total size was 80. Out of this is only 27 millimeter away. Okay, so what we will do is we will calculate the moment. So basically the idea of distributing this weld is that the moment applied because of the external load, that is the failure load of this or design load of the design strength of this angle, that and the moment because of this weld, they should cancel each other out. Okay, so what we will do is we will take LW2. So if I take moment about this point, for example, moment about this line, then this weld will not contribute towards the moment. This weld will contribute and this weld will contribute, because this weld is exactly at the same location as the point where we are considering the moment about. So this is 80 millimeter weld and its centroid is 40 millimeter away. This is LW2 long weld and its centroid is 80 millimeter away. Fine. And there is a force that is acting, that is at 27 millimeters away, 27.3 millimeters away. So I know all the ingredients. I just need to put them in the equation. So LW2, that is the length, multiplied by the strength per unit length. That will be the total force of this weld. Correct? 662.8 is the strength per unit length, multiplied by the length will give me the total force of this portion of the weld, multiplied by the distance from here, that is 80 millimeters. So that gives me moment coming from this weld's failure. At the same time, if you consider this weld, its centroid is somewhere here. So this length multiplied by this strength per unit length will give me the total force multiplied by 40. So that effectively is acting here, that force is acting here. So there will be a force moment equal to this much. So these two moments are in the weld direction and they have to balance the total force, the total moment that is coming from the external load, which is 222.27. That is the strength, design strength of the angle, multiplied by the distance from this edge, that is 27.3. And I can solve this equation. This is single equation with a single unknown, LW2. So LW2 turns out to be 74.4. I approximate that to 75. So LW2 is 75. LW1 will be equal to total length 335 minus 75 minus 80, total 180. I can call it 181 millimeter. Okay, so this length has to be 181. This length has to be 75, and this is 80. In total is 335. Okay, so that's how you can typically design a welded connection, a fillet welded connection. Any questions?
Sir,
Yeah.
How can you differentiate between square edge and rounded toe edge by looking at the diagram?
Yeah. So this is a hot rolled section. The number that was given to you was a hot rolled section. Okay, it is saying ISA, that is Indian Standard Angle. This is a hot rolled section. So a hot rolled section, obviously, if you even go to the code, it will show you the shape. So it will show you that this is a, so if you go to the table which gives the list of all the ISA sections, let me see if this particular ISA section I can find in IS 800 also. Does anybody remember which annexure has all the cross sections? There is one annexure with all the cross sections. No. There will be respective tables. There are various codes which have all these cross sections. Our code gives you only
Like
the,
IS 808, it is there. IS
yeah,
808.
IS 808. Yeah, thank you. So IS 808 will give you uh, the dimensions, and in that dimensions, along with the dimensions, it will also provide you the exact drawing of the cross section, and from here you can make out. So here I am saying it's a square edge because it has, this is the end of the angle, so it must be cut from here. So when you cut it, when you machine it, you will not get a toe edge, but on this side you will get a toe edge. So this is of course a square edge also. This edge, you can see it's a square edge. If there was a connection to be welded here, that maybe you cannot see my mouse very clearly, I'll project. So if you had to do some welding here, in this case you are not doing any welding here, but if you were to do any welding, this will also be a toe edge because you can see that it is rounded toe. Here you are doing a weld, that is this edge, same as here. So here this is a rounded toe. You are doing a welding here, this is a square edge, and also you are doing a some welding here at the end. Yeah, and that is a, you have to cut it in the shop. It doesn't come in that shape from the factory. So when you cut it, or even the shape that comes even in the factory, it has been cut already. So when it is cut, it will be a square edge. Okay, it will not be a toe. So toe is only when, toe is a product of rolling process. So when the sections are rolled, the cylinders or the dies which are through which it has to roll and retain, achieve this shape, they have these curved surfaces from where these angles also get these curved surfaces. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, anything else?
So, and the use of FU in the fillet welds, is it
Yeah.
because of the higher stress concentration?
um yeah, so like the question is whether, why do we use FY for groove weld and FU for the fillet weld?
Yes, sir.
The reason for that is, I think I had asked you guys to think about it. Does somebody have any explanation for that? Any reason? Has anybody given any thought to it? Okay, so actually, if you can see, let me go to the, so here if you look at the, when we define the what is it called, the effective thickness or throat thickness for a fillet weld, it's only one plane. If you move a little bit from here or here of that plane, your effective thickness will increase, and as a result you will not have the failure there. So the surface of the failure is very well defined already. It exactly, you know exactly where the surface failure is going to be. And as a result, you may remember through our discussions throughout, when the failure is confined in a very small area, right? So let's say when you used to have a member in tension and you have holes, when you have holes, you have already defined the surface where the fracture is going to take place. Okay, so about those surfaces you need to consider ultimate stress, because a little bit of yielding is okay. Yielding is a more distributed phenomenon, but that is okay. If it is happening only locally, you don't mind. uh, it is the rupture that is the problematic thing, so you need to design for the rupture. However, when you don't know exactly where the failure is going to take place, so for example, in a groove weld, what we use is minimum of the two FYs. We can say, and of course we have to use that because the two materials get mixed, so we do not know where which material exists. So even in this fused portion where you had the filler material, it may be that some of this is also consisting of the base metals, right? So you don't know which FU to use, FY or FU to use. So basically in this particular case, you don't know whether the failure will be here, 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 here. In this case, you don't know where the failure will be. It can be anywhere because it's almost like a homogeneous material. And in that case, since you don't know exactly where the failure is going to be, you have to use FY value. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Yeah. Anything else?
Sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in example 2.
Yeah.
Sir, sir, when we are asked like means whether it is safe, sir, we determine the design load or the design capacity and then compare it with factored, given factored, right?
Yeah, so you can do that way also. Same thing.
Sir, but here you use the whatever is the factored load and from that only you determined it, and
yeah. So
again
basically, what I did was I calculated the maximum stress. Then for maximum stress, I could have calculated. So maximum stress is the capacity side of it. Sorry, maximum stress that I have calculated here is the demand. Hello.
Yes, sir. Sir, that is
Yeah.
the demand. Sir, you have
Yes.
not calculated the design capacity, right, of that.
So you can calculate the design capacity also. So design capacity is 250. So in other words, if you do, let's say you know the strength of 250 is applicable. So that is stress 250. From that stress, you can back calculate moment. So stress multiplied by y divided by I. See, my by I is equal to stress. Correct? My by
Yes.
I is equal to stress. So
Yes, sir.
stress multiplied by I divided by y will give you the moment. So you can calculate design moment like that using 250 as the stress value
Yes, sir.
divided by 1.5. So that will give you
Yes.
design moment capacity, and then compare the applied moment. Compare that value with the applied factored moment.
Yes, sir.
Moment
Yes,
demand.
sir.
That is also same. I'm just comparing the stresses. You can compare the moment values also. It's the same thing. You will get the same result.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, so maybe I can move forward now. So basically the lecture notes are, I have covered the entire lecture note material. I have one more class to go. For the next class, maybe I can talk about fire behavior, because that was the topic that I wanted to touch upon. Also, there are two intermediate topics that I had to skip, that I have never been actually able to teach because this course never gives me enough time. So one topic was this uh, plate girders. The other one is composite beams. But since the lecture notes are already shared with you, you can go over them. Other thing is fire behavior. So which one would you prefer me to teach in the next lecture? Of course, I cannot cover the entire topic. I can only talk briefly. I have had some time to talk about the composite beams. So plate girders, things are a bit because plate girders are is a more involved topic, and especially we have to once we start worrying about the tension field action and those things. If you are interested, I can talk about plate girders also in the next class. Of course, we will not be able to solve any examples, but I can describe briefly. Or otherwise, if you want, I can talk about fire behavior also, high temperature behavior. Which one would you prefer? Can you vote
Plate
for it?
girders, plate girders,
Okay.
sir. Fire,
Okay.
because there are not many resources in the online, and research is picking up right now. So fire would be preferable.
Okay. Can you guys vote for it? Because I think everybody should be able to answer. Yeah. Type your preferences. Okay, looks like only one person had asked for plate girders. Manoj had asked for plate girders, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I think I'll go with the fire. We'll briefly talk about what happens to buildings in fire briefly. Okay. Um, With plate girders, I have shared some material with you, so you please go through that material. If you have questions, we can discuss that. Okay. All right. So today I wanted to also discuss a little bit about practical connections. So one connection you saw, this kind of a connection that I just discussed, is very common. Actually, what I'll do is now I'll switch off my camera, and because I have to do more writing now, I don't have the lecture notes for that. So I'll switch off the camera and I will use this laptop as a tablet now. Okay. So let me go here. You can still hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are various types of connections available, and the Indian code also has one annexure. Let me see how quickly I can reach that. I cannot remember these annexure numbers and all. Some people are very good at these things. So this particular annexure F, which talks about various types of connections. Okay. So these are basically, first part is about the splicing. Okay. So you can do splicing using bolted connections, and this particular section is focusing more on the bolted connections somehow. So, but welded connections are more popular these days. Somehow they have not provided enough information or enough resources on welded connections for some reason. So bolted connections are also equally popular, but welded connections are getting more popular these days. So splicing details are provided here. You can, from figures, you can try to figure out, from these diagrams, you can try to figure out that these are the two beams which are being spliced here. Splicing means the same beam. So you are not, it's not like you're supporting a beam on a column or something. It's a beam that is continuous, and you want to make sure that all the forces get transferred through that joint. Because why do you have to provide a joint? Because you don't have infinite length plates. The plates come in particular sizes. The girders have to be transported to the location, so they have to be of a limited size. And then the practical requirement or the real requirement may be of a larger size girder. So you have to do splicing. Okay. So splicing requires, so if you have same depth girders or beams, then you can do splicing in this way. If you have different depths, then you have to do splicing in this way, and then you have to make sure that additional stiffeners are applied here. You can see some kind of a splicing for a column discussed here. Also, there are different types of connections that are between beam and column, and I will quickly talk about the concepts. I won't have enough time to discuss about the detailing. So let's say I have a column. Okay, and then, oh wow, this is so much better writing in tablet mode. So you have a column, and then I want to connect a beam with it. So there can be different ways of connecting this beam with the column. Or you may have a requirement of one beam. This may be the primary beam supporting another beam. This is a secondary beam. Okay, so in such kind of connections, these are very common in building connections, common types of building connections. You may have different purposes. Sometimes, for example, this connection, the beam column connection, I may want to make it a moment carrying connection. So for example, if this is the frame, this is the beam, and these are the columns, and there is a lateral load applied, then for it to have any resistance, it has to be a moment frame. A moment frame requires you to have a rigid connection between the beam and the column. And if the connection between the beam and the column is rigid, that means you should be able to transfer the shear forces, and also you should be able to transfer the moments. Okay, so how do you transfer the moments? There are ways to do it. One way is to provide angles, okay, and connect the angles to the beam and connect the angles to the column. Now, usually that is not considered as a very, very strong way to transfer the moments, and usually it is not classified as a rigid connection. One way, alternate approach, is to use a T-section and connect it from both sides. You can weld them. Alternate approach could be to bring this beam close enough to the column so that you can directly weld it, and that is very common in the USA. Okay, so they directly weld it. They bring the beam all the way as close to the column as possible, And sometimes they have to use a backup plate a little bit, and they can directly weld it. Okay. Alternatively, you can design this connection as only a load gravity load bearing system. So what you may have is, let's say I have this frame wherein one bay is having some kind of a bracing system, and then this bay is purely gravity load bearing system. Okay, so it does not have to have any lateral load resistance. Any lateral load that is applied here, will be transferred or will be resisted by these bracing systems. And this particular frame can be purely gravity load bearing system. So in this kind of situation, all I have to do is provide a connection. It is getting very messy. I just need to provide a shear connection. And since the shear force mostly acts on the web of the beam, all I have to do is connect the web of the beam to the column. Okay, and that is considered good enough. And the calculation of this kind of a web is this kind of a connection is very easy. In India, you are not allowed to use a single plate, which is usually called a web cleat. Sorry. In the US, that is a common practice, or it's also known as fin plate. In India, you are usually required to use at least one or two angles. So looking from the top, if I can see from the top, this is the flange of the beam. This is the flange of the beam, and there is a web in between. And there has to be one angle here, as per Indian requirement. And this is the column flange. This is the column. So these angles have to be welded or bolted to the web of the beam, and then these can be welded or bolted to the flange of the column. So these kind of connections are usually known as shear only connections, because they are designed only to carry the shear force. If you apply any moment here, this beam will very easily rotate. So at the end, you can almost assume that there is no moment resisting capacity, or there is a moment hinge at the end. It can resist only shear. These kind of connections are called shear connections. The earlier type of a connection, where the top flange and the bottom flange were welded, that kind of a connection was called a rigid connection. Okay, and then there is a variety in between, which is known as semi-rigid connection. So I would recommend you to read through this annexure F a little bit. It has three types of connection: simple connection or shear only connection, rigid connection, and semi-rigid connection. And various types of experimental studies have been conducted, which are used then to classify them. Basically, none of these connections are 100% rigid, and none of them are 100% simple. All of them have some moment resistance. So based on in what range that moment resistance lies, they are classified between three categories: rigid, semi-rigid, and flexible. Okay, so any questions about this? I think I would not have enough time to discuss the designing protocols for these different types of connections. I hope you are able to understand the difference between simple connection and rigid connection, right? That is more critical for you. Similarly, you may have to provide this kind of a beam-to-beam connection, which is almost always a shear-only connection, and you can simply do this. And if you notice, I have cut the small part from the top of this beam. Can anybody say why did I have to cut it? I had to cut it so that the top surface of the two beams are at the same level, so that we can have a floor here, right? Obviously, otherwise I could always put this beam, the secondary beam, under the primary beam. But if I do that, then the two beams will not be exactly at the same level, so the floor will be uneven. All right, so I think I can stop here now. If you have any questions, you can shoot an email. Okay, let me know. Thank you, guys.
Sir?
Yeah.
Sir, but by cutting, you will decrease the strength and introduce some more stresses right there.
Yeah, so the cutting is done in a very particular manner. It has to be done very smoothly so that you don't introduce any stresses. Additionally, what happens is that the beam at the ends is carrying only shear force. If you look at a beam which is simply supported, so imagine that this is the secondary beam and it is simply supported. So what kind of stresses do you have here if you apply any distributed loads or any gravity loads? The bending moment diagram is this. You have zero stresses from the bending moment diagram at the ends. Shear force diagram is this. Sorry, it's very poorly drawn again. The shear force diagram looks like this. So you have large shear force demand at the ends. Most of the shear force is resisted by the beam. So by the web, sorry. Most of the shear force is resisted by the web, and you are not harming the web. All you are doing is basically cutting off most of the flange. So flange offer resistance against the moment, and you don't have much moment demand at the ends. So therefore, this is an acceptable approach.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, so in that case, I will stop this class today. And in the next class, I will discuss. If you have any questions about connections, you can ask. I can spend some time talking about it also. Otherwise, I'll move on to some fire behavior of. All right. Thank you.